Civic ecology practices are often critiqued as government abandoning its responsibilities and actually exploiting other groups to do its work. So one way to think about this is city governments, which are inevitably strapped for cash. They recognize the benefits that these community groups provide. And then what they do is they abrogate their responsibilities and they outsource to nonprofits and community groups the provision of ecosystem services and other public goods. A good example of this is nonprofit Friends of Parks groups that prune bushes, pull out invasive weeds, and pick up the trash in city parks. And these are all jobs that you think might be better done by the city parks department. But there's a counter-narrative to this exploitation story. And this is the narrative that I ascribe to. And this narrative celebrates civic ecology practices as evidence of really wonderful things that take place in a society. So civic ecology practices provide evidence, for example, of people's caring for nature, of people's concern for their community, of citizens' abilities to work together for the common good, and of a community's initiative and collective efficacy. In this view, the main threat posed by government is top-down or authoritarian regimes that suppress citizen action, or policies or legislation that quash the community spirit, the initiative, that's part of civic ecology practices. But there's examples of policymakers who don't do these things. In this module, you'll learn about how policymakers like city mayors or congressmen work in concert with civic ecology stewards, with both parties supporting each other's work. And you can think of this as kind of a dance between bees and more rooted trees. But this dance is not a quick tango, but a dance actually that transpires over years and years. The bees are the civic ecology stewards, the small organizations who are very active, and we also refer to them as social entrepreneurs. The trees are the larger, more rooted organizations, the policymakers who support civic ecology practices, and we call them policy entrepreneurs. In this module, we're going to explore that dance by tracing the history of how one place that was a very, very broken place in the 1970s has been transformed, at least partially, over the last 40 years. And that broken place is the Bronx River, along with the South Bronx neighborhoods that comprise its watershed. But before we do this 40-year dance, I want you to take a deeper look at how two major components of civic ecology practices come together. The first component is learning that leads to adaptation, or the ability to change practices based on what we learn by observing and measuring their outcomes. And the second component is social connections that lead to collaborations. And here, I'm not just talking about collaborations within a civic ecology practice, but actually collaborations on a regional scale, like the scale of the Bronx River watershed. And I'm talking about collaborations that bridge across multiple civic ecology practices and other institutions. And we're going to learn about these processes, adaptation and collaboration, through the story of a police detective turned scientist and how he found a handgun in the Bronx River.